It's a full house this morning. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the time, especially to talk about such an intimate film like Bliss. I want to start with Joe, and what was the desire to? I believe this is the second film that you've done, in kind of in this grouping to continue the story.
Yeah, it came about through conversations over the years that I would have with Clint Jordan, who was the star of my debut feature film, which came out in 2001, called Virgil Bliss, and that film ends sort of on a cliffhanger with the titular character played by Clint, having just murdered his best friend. He takes his first drink in 12 years. And it's like, okay, where to? And then we never touched it. We never did anything with it. And over 20 years later, talking with Clint, having one of our epic conversations about life and movies, ideas. We just decided, you know what, we're not getting any younger. Let's follow up. Let's see, where is Virgil now? What became of him? And at the time, Clint had been working with Faryl out in Los Angeles, and I'm in New York. And he said, Faryl is one of us. Let's bring her in and let's brainstorm. And we came up with the story together. I teach in Boston, although I live in Brooklyn. And so I would take these, it's like 4.5 hours to Boston, 4.5 hours back. And we would have these very long, several hour like sort of story conversations where we would hash out ideas. And then Faryl, I think you created like a Google Doc or something, and that was it. That's how the story really came together. It was just like I guess like a writer's room, but a remote writer's room.
Yeah, and it was wonderfully told, and I'm always fascinated by filmmakers and actors that decide to do projects where it's very intimate. I mean, it's really just Farrell and Clint on scene most of the time, and it's really difficult because there's no explosions to hide anything, no big drama to like or to really. It's you guys and what you do as actors. So I want to start with Clint because it was amazing to watch you perform kind of not necessarily a good way because I've been around people with addictions and things like that, but but it's subtle things, subtle movements, ways that the thought process. I thought the pacing was very very well because some of those moments needed to kind of just uh, it needed to happen the way to let you go through your top thought process and then go, oh, I need to go do drugs again. But it was very subtle. It felt very real. Can you tell me about getting into that character?
Um, yeah, I think in terms of the addiction, it was also sort of dovetail with the story, which is that in the first movie, Virgil had not been drinking. He got out of prison. He was trying not to drink and to go straight, and fell in love with this woman, um, and got in with some characters that were just really bad influences on him. But his aim was always kind of true, and and so at the very end of the movie, it becomes tragic, and Virgil is left uh, with his friend having killed his friend, and he starts drinking. That's the last time we see him, and so we talked when we talked about doing this. Now this was 2002. So now we started to talk about doing a story, and we said, well, perhaps a sequel. My With the opioid epidemic happening, this was also during COVID. So we wanted to do something, just speaking to the intimate quality, that was a little more intimate than how the world was on devices all the time, and we were just distracted. We weren't talking to each other. People go to bars, they don't even talk anymore. We there was a desire to do something that was the return to the animal desires that we have, which are to talk, to be together, to to uh, to live, you know, in these spaces. So we thought of Virgil had gone and left the East Coast. He was trying to disappear in the desert somewhere, and so many, even friends of mine who had become addicted to opiates, it happened so gradually. It happened, you know, he's doing manual labor, he's drinking, but you know, my thought process on his addiction was that he started probably taking Percocets and things to feel better, to be able to get up. He's getting older. He's trying to work in this barn like so many people do. Um, and it's taking a toll on his body. And then after a while, of course, the two of them are addicts and have a codependent relationship. And we didn't want to glamorize the drugs. You know, there's no close-ups of a needle, you know, drawing drugs up, you know, and because it becomes sort of addiction porn at that time. And I don't think it's important, really. It's just important to see the human being and the toll it takes on them. So what I did was I drew on my own experience with addicts that I knew in my family. One of whom just died last year, a cousin of mine. And I grew up in North Carolina, and then they were on the East Coast. And then also I watched documentaries just to see the behavior. You know, to me, what's interesting is how does that manifest in behavior when we have addictions or anything, really? I mean, how does whatever's going on with us, our internal conflict, our need, how does that manifest in a physical behavior? And so that was what I was trying to work on, was something that would be would it would be something that he had no desire to change, but it was an obstacle in his life nevertheless.
I did notice that you guys had when he was partaking, it was dark shots. It was kind of far away. We were at different angles, but a lot of the focus was what led him to that moment. And I did appreciate that because it wasn't just that he was just trying to use for uses. It was certain situations. Amy showing up, or like heck, just when the first incident happened, when he found Amy's sister on the bed, and you could understand, okay, that's what led him to, I need this now. And then you guys just kind of went through it a little bit to showcase that's what it was. But yeah, it was done as neat as possible. I guess that's for lack of a better term. Speaking of Amy, Faryl, what a character to watch I mean, he just buried your sister, and he walks in all dirty, and you're in the house, and I just knew immediately. I think just something about your presence knew. Not necessarily going to be trouble, but this is going to be real interesting. And watching your character unfold was a pleasure on screen. Tell me a little bit about Amy and bringing her to life.
Oh, thanks. Well, it's funny, we would mix up their names too, but she's brown hair is Joe, blonde hair is Amy.
Oh, so it's
brown
Joe.
hair
Okay.
lady, Joe. Yeah, which is funny. I didn't mean to name her Joe. I remember because there's Joe, the director Joe, and it was foolish, but sometimes when I'm writing, I let the first names that come to me, I just go, those are their names. And it was Amy and Joe, and they just kind of stuck. And so, yes, Joe, she's a character.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you please.
No, yeah, I just really want to know about unraveling her in this kind of mental battle that you're having with Virgil as to trying to find out, what happened to your sister, and knowing that there was something more there, and just very meticulously just like kind of picking at it and almost like building a relationship to the point to where he almost has to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Well, I feel like she's like a truth truffle pig, like she's sniffing around for the truth maybe all the time. And I based a little bit of her on my family. I based a little bit of Joe on my aunt, and I based a little bit of Amy on my sister. And so there was a lot of family stuff. I tried to ground it in real people that I knew. But yeah, I wanted Joe to be sincere, and I wanted Joe to be believe she was righteous. I'm like a truth warrior.
And
But also I think she immediately is attracted to Dwayne and is trying to, like, I don't know, figure that out and can't quite. I think that's a complicated thing for her. But then she, like,
yeah, I think that's one of the things that you could tell there was some sort of chemistry from the beginning, and I was like, oh no, she's gonna fall for him too. What's gonna happen? So it was really intriguing to watch the back and forth. And since I have you all here, I do want to talk about the scene progressions of you being tied up. Clint, I'm sorry, I'm pointing at a screen, acting like you could see me pointing. Clint being tied up on a bed, and kind of that progression from the morning and then through the night, and just kind of that back and forth battle of wits, really, of who's going to break first. Joe, I want to start with you, and you know, how did you guys plan that out? Thinking about that scene, and what did you guys want to make sure to capture there? Because it was really cool to see it go from daytime to nighttime, and just see how both of their willpowers was changing through the scenes.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, I think our whole process in writing the screenplay was to be very just grounded in the moment, and understanding who these characters are and what their needs are and how far they will go, and then just imagining, bouncing ideas off. Well, what could happen? What would they do? And the reality is, he wasn't going to tell her what she needed to know, and she needed to know. She wasn't going to leave until she got these answers. And at some point one day, we just I think we came to the conclusion she's going to have to tie him up and not give him water, not give him food, not give him his drugs. That's how far she's going to have to go, and maybe then he might crack. And so it really was that progression, as in all. I think there's a few moments like this throughout the story where it's like you kind of don't expect it, but in our mind, when we were bouncing ideas off each other, like what could happen, it's like, this is what would happen. You know, if we were, this is not Hollywood logic. This is not, wave of the wand, logic. It was like, this is how two people who are these kinds of characters in this situation, this is what they would do. And so I saw, personally, as a director, I saw no other option for Joe than she was going to have to tie him up and take total control of the situation. So for me, that's where it came from. I don't know if you guys see it differently.
I think that's also how she shows love, honestly. I think that it's so complicated, but she had just spent a lot of her life taking care of her dad, who was sick. And I think that she shows love by taking care of people. And she was going to get him clean. And she was going to get him to tell the truth. And she wanted to clean up his sheets and wipe him down. Like, she wanted to have him need her. And that's her complicated, weird sexual anger need.
Yeah. And when we were excuse me, when we were discussing that, Joe, we were discussing, well, is he going to be tied up with his clothes on? Is he going to be naked the whole film? Are we going to have an underwear? What kind of underwear? It's like, because you're going to be I mean, I have to say, as an actor, it became almost method, because I was literally tied to the bed for a long time in these scenes. And it does if you have any claustrophobic tendencies or anything like that, it really feeds into that, because Julia Kerr, who was one of the gaffers she showed me all these knots. She made all these knots and these tie-up ways, and because we had to be able to slip out of it at times, you know, to just my arms were hurting, you know. But yeah, I think the whole going through that we were discussing redemption, the theme of redemption that keeps coming up in the story, and there is a certain almost Christ-like feel that we weren't intending. But when I'm watching it, it's like Mary Magdalene and this Christ figure dying and then rising from the dead again, you know, in this coming awakening, where before they had been kind of anesthetized by these drugs and this kind of languid desert air that just was, I think for Dwayne, his intention was to fade away, to die, and that Amy would continue. And then Amy dies instead. And so here he is with this dilemma. He's now, it's not his house. He's now, where can he go? And then when Joe comes and he wants to just stall with the phone, and she becomes onto him. That's when we came up in the writing. Well, what does Joe, and there's the turn of Joe, because we don't, you know, suddenly I'm waking up and I've been tied to a bed with a person. and it is I think there is and as a writer, not as Dwayne, but as a writer looking back at the story, I do, what Faryl said, I think is very true. I think it was her way of caring for him, and at the same time getting what it is that she thought she rightfully was entitled to, which was her inheritance. And one of these people was going to have to give in. You know?
Oops, you're muted. You're muted.
That's a thing I should not be if I wanted to talk. Yeah, I felt like a real like a climatic battle between you two, but a lot of the really subtle things that you did, like, I mean, if you had clothes on, you wouldn't be able to see all that sweat on your body and really what was happening to you. So that was really smart. And then also just watching Joe approach him and being smart about, you know, offering him drugs, but then not giving it to him, just showed just knowing the situation, but at the same time going to be nurturing enough not to actually give him something like that, you know. So I thought it was very, very, very thoughtful and very well done scene that I enjoyed very much, just because of the little choices that you made that make it all work. Because sometimes you could really mess something up and throw entire character off by it, making him do something that's really doesn't fit the rest of the story. So kudos to you guys. I am out of time, so thank you so much for joining me today. I enjoyed Bliss very, very much. I do hope to see the character again, and I will be going back to watching the first film to kind of get a little bit more background. So congratulations on the film, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.